Judge. Stephanie, Judge.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Island Transit Board of Directors Special Meeting Friday, December 13th, 2024, 2:30 p.m. I'm calling it order, and let's do roll call.
Melanie Bacon. Jill Johnson. Jenny Bright.
Janet St. Clair, if you're waiting for online.
And Craig Seeger, Chair.
And
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Lance.
Is Lance there? I didn't see him.
He's online. He's on
Lance, are you
phone.
here?
Lance, are you there?
He's not muted, but his phone shows.
All right, I believe we have Lance Yerton joining as well. We will confirm it. All right, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second to approve the agenda. Any discussions? Seeing no discussion. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, extensions, motion passes. We have an agenda. And now, this is the time set aside for members of the public to speak to the board about subjects of concern or interest or items that are not on the meeting agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Public comment may be ended or modified if the comments become disruptive and are not germane to the business at hand. Input requiring lengthier comment is best submitted in writing. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Last call. Are there any public comments? I'm not seeing any hands raised. There are no public comments in the room. So we'll now move on to public input in the 2025 annual budget. Is there any public input in the 2025 annual budget? For the input on the 2025 annual budget. Last call for input on the 2025 annual budget. All right. I see none, so we will now move to business item number 1, the 2025 wage grid resolution number 1824. Is there a motion to adopt 1824? And then we'll have a discussion.
So you're asking for a motion to approve the wage grid?
There's not a presentation first.
Stephanie's here.
Okay, yeah.
I was just, I just didn't know.
Yeah. Normally, we have a motion, we discuss the content of the motion, but I invite Stephanie, would you like to just take us through the wage grid?
Yeah, why don't you tell us how this differs?
Okay.
So the changes that you see on the 2025 wage grid. The grid now separates non-exempt from exempt positions. In doing so, that caused us to have to increase the numbering process, but it didn't change the pay structure. So it was just a numbering process. So you'll see non-exempt at the top indicated by NE dash and then whatever level it was. And then down below you have exempt with an E dash, whatever is the appropriate level. The other change that you'll see on this particular grid is because it is for 2025. It does reflect a 3% COLA that is a part of the 2025 budget that the board will be discussing next. So all the steps were increased by 3% for the COLA. You will also notice if you take a look at exempt E11 and you look at step A, that annual amount of $77,969 represents the Washington State minimum exempt salary threshold. And so that is the one level where the 3% was applied to all of the other steps associated with that level based on the 2024 wage grid. Level E15 is, and this is where it's a difference from the 2024 wage grid, is you'll now notice that level E15 is where all department managers are set. And they will be focused more around a minimum, mid, and maximum point for salary versus step increases the way the other positions are. Those positions will be impacted by COLA, so they'll get the COLA in January as well. The one thing I will share too is that what you're seeing from just a visual different look is you'll notice we don't have the job titles listed right next to the level. That's just for ease of being able to read the wage grid because it can get really small. But the second page in the board packet had the pay grade and job titles associated. And as this wage grid, once approved, is socialized to the employees, they will be posted together. So they will be posted together. We're just not keeping it on the same form just for ease of access and being able to see it. Once approved, HR will partner with payroll on the implementation of the 2025 COLAs and everything else associated with that.
I see a correction that unfortunately didn't get made. So on the flip side, exhibit A, E14 procurement and risk manager is an E15.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I'm sorry. I thought
That's
that was the
okay.
capital
No
project.
worries, I just wanted
Okay.
to point that out in case anyone
Thank
had
you. We
questions.
make that change. So where right now on the pay grade and job title will be an adjustment, E14, this procurement and risk manager, that position will move to E15.
Thank you.
And we can take care of that. Thank you for that catch, Melinda.
You bet.
Any other things you want to mention?
I will share, and because I know that the public is hearing this, we have employees here as well, online, is in Q1 of 2025, a compensation policy as well as a performance management policy will be implemented, will be created and implemented. And with that, will more closely tie any increases to performance, as has been the goal, I guess I should say. So I just wanted to put that so that the board has awareness of that. Any questions?
Board members, any questions?
I like the way that this is set up.
Yes, I have a
Really
question.
well.
Janet
Really
has
like
a question.
It's easier to navigate.
So,
Commissioners, did you say something?
yes, I said I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd just like to make sure I fully understand this. It is good to see it laid out in what I would call traditional ways of presenting salary structures. What I'd like to have explained to me once again, because I didn't fully capture it, is the exactly on 11 and on E15, why those are laid out the way they are, why we just do low, midpoint, and high, and we took out steps. I didn't fully understand what it referenced and the reason why. If you could go over that again, please.
Sure, well, I'll touch on E11 if I believe this is what your question is, Commissioner St. Clair. I spoke about E11 in that step A. The dollar amount represented on the annual pay reflects the Washington State minimum salary exempt threshold. And so that's why that figure, if you look at step A in comparison to step B, there doesn't appear to be the same spread amongst, from step A to step B, but it's because that was increased significantly due to state requirements. But every other step within E11 includes the 3% COLA
that's not
as
my
well as the
question.
normal spread.
That's not my question. I'm fine with
Oh, I'm sorry.
E11. I'm fine with E11. What I don't fully understand, given the way we've set this up, is E15 and 11 in the first table, which just have a low, midpoint, and high. And you went through talking about state, but that's what I wanted to get clear is 11.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry, you said
E15.
11. I thought, okay. Thank you. Thank you,
11
Commissioner.
and
Okay.
E15.
Yeah.
I understand the other
Thank you.
ones.
I thought you were talking E11 of the new grid. Thank you, but you were talking 2024. So when you look at the comparison of the 2024, that level was 11 in comparison to level E15. It's the same level. The difference is the addition of the 3% COLA. So the minimum point of 109. And then the minimum point of 113 on the 2025 wage grid represents the 3% COLA.
Okay, so that's the 3% COLA, but you said something about what what is required or the recommended salary ranges and why you have a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum in E15. So let's just stay in E15 and forget about E11. I get the COLA. What I'm
No,
trying to
just that
understand is
part.
why they look differently and what was the sentence you said about what the feds or the state defines as these maximum, minimum. Just remind me of that.
So, so Janet, it's two different issues. So the Fed issue, if you look at, if you look on the 2025 E11 pay grade, we're at 77,969. That is more than 3% increase because the state raised the minimum threshold for an exempt employee more than 3%. So we had to have the very minimum that an exempt employee is paid at Island Transit to be at least reflective of what the state is. So that's that particular thing. With regard to 2024 grade 11 and 2025 grade E15, which is the
Yes.
same pay grade with different nomenclature. So one of the things, this is the thing that I did, Janet, because one of the issues that I've had here as a compensation professional is that we in this system are giving increases to people, not just COLA increases, but also step increases every year to people regardless of performance of their job. And in my view, once you're an exempt employee, you should get your COLA, but any increase associated other than that should be based on the performance of your job. But particularly if you are in a leadership position. So if you are in a leadership position, you should not automatically get both COLA and a separate increase. And so this is an attempt to try to bring, and there will probably be other changes related to this over the next 12 months. But when we have a new HR person here, this is an attempt to try to bring performance expectations into pay raises among the exempt population at Island Transit.
That clarifies what I was trying to do of understanding why it was different. Now, why do you think having it in only 3 categories actually pushes the envelope to expect performance requirements? How does just having a line that is less clarifying and not having steps make that clear? Because I agree with your concept. I agree that while COLAs are one thing, we should have performance expectations and compensation related to performance, especially for managers. So the concept I agree with. What I don't understand is how having just 3 anchor points does that. I just have never seen that.
So, well, I think you have, if you look at the Island County one, but.
I have seen it. I have never seen it elsewhere. And
Well, yeah.
I've had issues. Let's not talk about Island County. Let's stay clear of
Okay.
it.
If you look at E14, for example, E14, step B, that reflects if somebody is in E14 and it's a new year, they're moving from 98,443 up to 103,371. And that reflects both a 3%, actually, excuse me, they're moving from the old 2024 rate, which was 95,576, up to $103,371, which reflects both a COLA of 3% and a pay increase of what, 2%? I don't know what it is, 2.5%, whatever it is. So there's no expectation of performance. So you could be the worst employee of this agency. You're gonna get both a COLA and an increase, just because you were here, just because you had a seat for a year, you get that increase. So if you're at E15, you're not going to automatically get that, you're gonna get the 3%. but you're not automatically going to get an additional amount of money because there isn't a step B, step C, step D, step E that you can fit into for the next year.
Okay, I hear that. When we're talking about exempt employees, what I am struggling with at this high end is even if our goal is that we don't want seat warmers, we want people doing their jobs, why do we not have the same structure so that anyone in an exempt position who has leadership responsibilities is expected to perform?
I completely agree with you, Janet. Melinda agrees with you, Stephanie agrees with you. That is the direction that they want to go to. When as I've been sitting in this seat in HR, I have been trying to make necessary changes, but not extreme changes.
Yeah,
And making that type of change seemed pretty extreme. When I'm not paid to be the HR manager, and I don't get a performance review from this agency for what I do. And so, that just seemed like a bigger stretch than I wanted to take on in my role, but I agree with you completely.
so I agree. The bridge too far during a transition time, that's fine. Where in E15, where I have had anxiety given what's happened recently, is that it allows someone to move, potentially allows someone to move radically across steps, depending on how a performance is structured. And I only say that out of slight trauma and anxiety about the lack of transparency in what happened in our past and our desire to create more transparency and structure going forward. Having the steps in the middle eliminated makes it possible for things to happen that happened before without the board's understanding or knowledge. So that's my anxiety about that. And I'll just share that, but it's not enough to stop me from approving this. I just want to share that what we're looking for is the constraints and rigors in our tools that help us make sure we have transparency and accountability going forward.
Melinda, can you speak to what the long term?
Yeah, I certainly can. So it is the intent with the implementation of performance evaluations across all exempt positions. I believe we already have them for our represented folks, but it would be non-exempt and
As well,
exempt.
All non-represented.
Just non-represented, thank you. We are getting ready to implement that, and what I've done is taken a model from another place that actually assigns numerical scores to the performance. So as an example, you would have a 0 to 5, 0 to 2 would basically say you need to be on a performance improvement plan, with 0, 1, 2 being the lowest. 3 is meets expectations, 4 is exceeds expectations, with 5 being outstanding. Within your performance evaluation, you have certain categories that you're being evaluated on. And so each of those will be assigned a numerical value by the direct reports manager. So at the end, you average that, and there's then a scoring template, if you will, that says, okay, someone who averaged 3.75, they're just below exceeds expectations, gets X percentage increase. At 5, in other words, you'll have a percentage increase, which we don't have right at the moment, assigned to each of those levels. While it will be the recommendation of the manager, it will be up to the executive director and the HR manager for final approval on those increases. So it will be tightly tied to performance. And we will have, there's still, in my mind, and I don't know if this is what you intended, but in my mind, there are still certain I don't want to call them steps because they're trying to get away from that, but there's increments, benchmarks, thank you, that make it fair for all. So in other words, if you have managers in certain areas where everybody's outstanding, you have another check and balance of saying, well, you know, you need to, within that performance evaluation, I don't want to hear that they're just great. Tell me and demonstrate exactly what they did to be great. What was the accomplishment? So there's going to be some tight guidelines around that.
And Janet, I would add to that, this also ties to when I had mentioned we need to create a true compensation policy.
Correct.
Because the
Correct.
compensation policy and the performance management policy would go hand in hand. And part of the performance management policy would be the important aspect of training whoever is going to be completing a performance evaluation document, how to do that, what do they look like, how do you score? So that's the work that needs to be done in Q1 of 2025.
And that policy is, I think, what I am looking for is the policy that allows us to continue to maintain that transparency and accountability,
right.
because I think the grids don't give it to us. It's the policy
Right.
that will drive that. Thank you for that.
And truly what we should have is a compensation policy, which will be the charge of the next HR manager. I do have some experience in that. I sat with the cities for 6 years. And so I can lend some expertise, but that helps to give that not only the transparency, but the guidelines of when and where increases are given. And it really will outline that nicely.
Thank you.
And then the other thing I would share, and I did mention this to Board Chair Seer, is that the wage grid is dependent upon the approval of the budget. Because the wage and salaries is in the budget and assumes a 3% increase. So I'm just putting that out there that if you approve the wage grid, it is tied to the budget.
So in other words, we
Which-
can't go crazy on increases. It has to be.
Yeah, or twofold, meaning if you want to approve the budget first and then come back and do the resolution for the wage grid, if you feel there might be concerns about approving the budget. That's the only reason why.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, I see no other discussion. Do we have a motion?
I move to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve resolution number 18-24, adopting the 2025 wage grid for Island Transit non-represented employees attached as Exhibit A and as corrected,
Yeah.
and incorporated into the resolution by this reference superseding any prior wage grids for non-represented employees effective January 1, 2025.
All right, all those in favor?
There's a second.
So we need,
Janet?
I'll second.
all right, any other further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, motion passes. We have an approved wage grid.
Well done.
I do have to observe that this took significant work. Through a firestorm actually this past year. And I just want to recognize, not my name, but the employees, they know who they are that did the hard work to pull this together. I will call out the acting HR director who doesn't get evaluated by this, but should receive some recognition. So thank you, Commissioner Bacon.
We will bow in your general direction.
Yeah, all right. So now we move on, I believe, to business item number 2, the 2025 budget. So we're gonna have a discussion here, probably start with Paul Aaron's. You can, I think, call out any changes. I see a couple things in red here.
Okay, thank you. Guess I'd just like to draw your attention to the budget highlight. Which is a couple pages into the handout. And it's now part of the total sequential page numbers, but it's just the budget highlight. So, I won't go into too much detail. Things have not really changed since the last draft. But there were 2 items that were added to the budget. One being the COLA decrease from 3.25 to 3.0. And the second item was an addition of some IT costs, about $14,000. Now, I should just recognize that on page 3 of 4. There was an addition made with these red lines, and although it's great that it was redlined, those are also shown on page 4 of 4, under administration. The fourth item, 14,000, and the reason, I passed this along to Meg to send out, and she didn't see that, so she added that to the document. So it's actually shown twice.
Melinda actually did that.
Okay.
Sorry.
But in any case, it really does belong under operations and not capital, if you really want to know, because it would be computer-based software subscription and 1 year renewal or less is considered operating, so it will be capital. But it is that same cost, and I just wanted to point out that it's duplicated in this document.
It's not duplicated in the spreadsheet, is it?
No. So, which maybe takes us to the spreadsheet, which is on page 4 of 4. You can see that the impact of those two changes to the budget started with draft 2, and then there were 2 items added, and it had just a very small impact, about $2,000+ to the budget. So it really hasn't, the draft 3 has not changed significantly from draft 2. I can talk about other highlights, but I would just be repeating what I did at the last meeting, so if anyone has any questions,
So questions from board members?
can answer them right now.
Paul's already got all my questions.
Any questions? From board members?
Something that a lot of people like to turn to immediately is on the back page of the entire thing. 501 capital, there were a lot of capital item changes throughout this budget process. And you can see most of them happened in draft 2. And also the addition of in the descriptors where each capital item was itemized as to what the cost was associated with those. So that impacts a lot of people. They're big dollar figures, and it might be of great interest to you if you want to just look at that. Over an hour at a time.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
All right, so we have motion, I believe, and we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
No, you don't have a
We
motion.
don't have, we don't have a motion. I'm
You're
sorry.
really trying to get the heck out of here.
No. I'm just used to motions before discussions.
Oh.
So do we have a motion to approve the budget?
I move to adopt resolution number 1924. Approving the 2025 annual budget of the Island County Public Transportation Area attached as Exhibit A and incorporated into this resolution by this reference.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Here's why I like to have discussions before motions is because I'm not comfortable with those capital expenditures at the dollar amounts they're at, so I'm going to vote for this budget contingent upon the fact that we have assurances that each of these capital projects, which sounds like our policy does, comes back in front of this board, and that there's not an automatic spend in people's minds, or I mean, we're putting it in there kind of as a placeholder that says we have the ability to do that.
So,
I just want to reiterate that those dollar amounts are not appropriate.
and by policy, and I'm sure Paul will validate this, is above 250K, which all those that you're worried
Yes.
about have to come to the board. We can't move forward without the board approving.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's.
We'll go through a procurement process where people have to bid and that. and
Yeah,
We'll
okay.
follow our process.
All right, because otherwise I have to yell about the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what, I apologize.
Okay.
That's what the last budget meeting was so helpful, because I had the very same concern about making sure that we had multiple looks at some of these capital issues where we had questions or ongoing concerns, and it just allows us to keep our due diligence iterative. I appreciate you raising that, Commissioner Johnson. Those were my questions last week.
Yeah, and then I just had one other comment, just to follow up to what Jill said. We had a number of things in the last budget discussion that were estimates. And I
Right,
know there was gonna be due diligence done around getting those estimates more shored up, so we really have an idea of how they're gonna impact us.
Many times they're preliminary and engineering design, and that's what takes us to a certain number. And so they're guesstimating, if you will, what those costs will be to go to construction.
All right, are we ready to vote? Any other discussion? I don't think so, so all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Motion,
Was Janet an opposed or an aye?
I was an I.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question.
Thank you, Matt, thank you. It was like watching me raise my hand in slow motion.
all right, so that motion passes. We have a 2025 annual budget.
Congratulations, y'all.
Yay. Worth recognizing everybody that worked on that. Of course, that happens every year, but nonetheless, through this last year, that was a special challenge. So appreciation to the executive director for jumping in here in the last weeks to
How many days?
bring it
is
in for a landing. So
I lost count. I'm just noticing pictures on the walls now, but thank you, and I do give credit to all the leaders here that brought us along. They participated through painstaking questions and workshops on my part, so
great.
they did a really good job.
All right, well, there is no other business for this special board meeting, so we are adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks.